Thank you for showing up. So, if you were here for the cryptography talk, this will be less topical in the industry and maybe a little bit more fun. Um, okay. So, the topic is transmitting long wave radio signals from wired headphones. And you might want to know why anyone would do that, but I can also tell you how. So, first step, have any of you ever used radio time signals by show of hands? Uh, Okay, I've got a few hands. This is actually kind of a trick question because if you've used GPS, which probably most of you have, that's actually a radio time signal. So the precise time uh, is transmitted by these GNSS satellites. That's the general term for GPS-like systems. There's a few different, I wouldn't say competing ones. They're sort of cooperating. So they transmit the precise time and also exactly where they are in their orbits. And then you collect that from a few different satellites and use it to triangulate your position. So that's one way that time transmitted over radio is important. Um, and technically, these are like really high frequency signals, so you might consider them more up into the microwave range. Some of these, but we'll call that radio too. So there's a lot of uses for having a global time standard. It's useful, as I said, for navigation, but also for scientific cooperation so that you can calibrate your instruments to be in sync with each other across the globe. It's useful for telecommunication. It's important to know exactly when a packet was sent out to properly coordinate everything. And it's useful in financial markets, actually. It's a measure of competition, who can get their signals through the fastest to make these like really fast machine driven trades on the stock market. So there's a huge area for that in the industry. But now we're going to go back, turn back the clock a little bit because there was before GNSS another way to transmit universal time, and that was on long wave radio. This is still available today. The visual material here is like advertising material from Casio because there's consumer uh, equipment like clocks and wristwatches that can read these time signals. They're distributed at a regional level by these powerful long wave transmitters. And there are different standards in different regions. So each of these that you see on this map here, each of these four different maps shows a transmitter doing a different standard for the time signal. Um, the differences between how long wave does things and GNSS boil down to basically that long wave signals are a lot simpler. Um, they're regional rather than global. But if you happen to be within relatively close range of a transmitter, they can penetrate through buildings. So you get indoor reception. Whereas GNSS, it's line of sight. So it's usually better if you can be at least near a window, if not outside. The bandwidth of GNSS is also a lot higher. Frequencies are a lot higher. Basically, it's going to be easier and cheaper to implement receiving long wave time than receiving GNSS. And this is what it looks like on SDR, the software defined radio. We've got long wave on the left and GNSS on the right. And you can just kind of see what I was saying visually there, where long wave signals are just a lot simpler, easier to decode. They tend to be like 1 bit per second. So it takes a while to decode a whole signal. But GNSS is just a lot more going on, as you can see. Um, so the impetus of this talk is that you can actually transmit these long wave time signals from headphone drivers, which sounds kind of wild and unbelievable, but actually, you've got oscillating magnetic drivers in your headphones, and those produce EM radiation, uh, also known as radio waves or light, but not visible light. The consumer equipment that you use for this kind of stuff tends to output at 44.1 kilohertz or 48 kilohertz. Um, and that supports frequencies up to half of that sample rate. So if you do 44.1 kilohertz, you could have basically a wave at 22.05 kilohertz. Um, Some long wave time broadcasts are on 40 or 60 kilohertz. So the combined effect of this is that if you do your driver's oscillating at 20 kilohertz, that is putting out a 20 kilohertz audio signal on your headphones, then it's producing weaker signals at the third harmonic. So this is wave harmonics. You've got the bass frequency at 20 kilohertz, and then you have overtones above that. So at the third harmonic, there's a relatively strong overtone, and it might be strong enough that if you have something right next to your headphone drivers, you can pick that up as a long wave radio signal. Long wave, I don't know if I properly explained this, is just radio at very low frequencies. We're talking like 60 kilohertz, that kind of thing, below AM on the radio dial. So as an example of implementing this with software, I created a C application. It's up on GitHub. You can look at it. It's GPL licensed, and it outputs an audio sine wave at 20 kilohertz by default. It can also do a lower frequency so that the third harmonic is 40 kilohertz to do a different one of the Japanese time signals. And it varies the amplitude of that signal based on the time encoding scheme. So it's really a lot like Morse code. It's high or it's low. And the amount of time that it's high or it's low, like dots and dashes in Morse code, you can decode that to get your binary information. This is most effective if the system time where you're running this application happens to be very accurate. So for example, I've got a GPS or GNSS antenna on this, and it tends to keep pretty accurate time if I'm near a window. And then if I run this application and I put this wristwatch that I'm wearing, which looks like a regular analog wristwatch, but actually reads radio time signals, if I put that right up against the speaker drivers that are built into this, it will actually set the time to that. There are other applications that can do this. There are some for Android, and there are even some for JavaScript. Probably someone could write a good one for WebAssembly as well. So mine's not the first. You can find others out there to play with. So thank you for coming to the talk. And before I take any questions, I thought I'd just do a very brief demonstration so that you can hear what this long wave signal sounds like. Of course, 40 kilohertz or 60 kilohertz is above audible frequencies for everyone, as far as I know. But the frequency that is going to generate a third harmonic of 40 kilohertz is low enough that a lot of people can hear that. So what I'm going to do is generate a signal like that now from the speaker drivers on this device, and it's going to sound high pitched and awful. So I'll only do it for like a few seconds, but you'll get the idea. So that's what it's doing. That, believe it or not, will set the time on a watch or a clock that has the right standard. Any questions? The question was, does that clock there have that standard? I have no idea. I haven't taken a close look. It's a little unusual to find in buildings around here, I think. So there's other ways to distribute time besides long wave. For example, you can have the time encoded like in your AC current, like the mains power. Sometimes I think I read about like railway clocks in some places being aligned that way. But there are consumer clocks that set themselves to radio. So if you're in the US, that's going to be WWVB. It's possible to pick that up here in New England, but it's pretty weak here compared to like out west. The transmitter is in Colorado. So if you're closer to that, you might be able to pick it up during the day indoors. When you're here, you kind of have to be at a window. The weather has to be nice, and it has to be the middle of the night. So it varies. Yes. Sorry, I don't know if I repeated that question, but it's just whether this clock in this room does that.
Since your signal is using the third harmonic, how much weaker of a signal is it than the bass signal?
Well, I haven't really measured that like quantitatively. When I showed those previews from those images from SDR, the one for longwave was actually from hooking up my headphones with this system because it was too difficult for me to actually catch the official WWVB signal. So that's to say, it's certainly not strong. You have to be right next to the drivers, basically. But that's about all I can say.
Yeah, so do we know what percentage of clocks and watches can be affected by these long wave uh, radio waves? Does this affect your normal quartz watches?
So this does not affect like a regular quartz watch, really. You'll probably know if a watch supports this because it will tend to say things like radio reception or atomic time or something like that on it. It's a selling point for manufacturers that make watches and clocks to that standard. You've got one right there.
That's one mine. Yeah.
Nice.
We've got all three signals all over the world.
Yeah, I had a wave scepter kind of like that one. I tend to like the big numbers. That's why I got this one. Thank you. Yeah, so we had one right in this room. Yes.
Do you know if there are any consumer available like RTL SDR sort of devices that could transmit at that instead of having to rely on this third harmonic uh, capability of your headphone driver?
That's an excellent question. I've been kind of looking for that myself. So I do have like an RTL SDR chip built into this thing here. I can't transmit right now, but long wave transmission is like, um, you know, I think it's a space where basically you're going to be looking to DIY circuitry. I'm not very adept at that, but I've looked into like, amateur software defined high frequency transmission. So that'd be more like shortwave. And that a lot of it is kind of DIY when you get into stuff that you can control with like SDR. There are some like off the shelf things for high frequency, but then when you get into long wave, I'm pretty certain you're going to have to be building something yourself. If someone knows different, let me know because that's really interesting to me.
So I would say, as a ham radio operator, just be careful about when and where you're transmitting, because sometimes there's rules and stuff for that. But I think there's a growing community of people that do really low power stuff to try things like this, especially in frequencies where it's not going to bother.
Yeah, I maybe should have mentioned that you're supposed to have a license to transmit in these long wave frequencies. The kinds of transmission that I was just mentioning are like, it only is really detectable within a few inches or centimeters of the headphone drivers or whatever it is. So it's not like the FCC is going to notice that I'm doing this. But yeah, if you're actually transmitting with enough power that it can be received like in nearby buildings or something, then you're going to want to be licensed and making sure you're following the guidelines for that band in whatever country you live in. So if that was the last question, I can take a seat. Thank you.